Here we are. We've done it. We hit the button. We're recording. Everything's beautiful. Everything's wonderful. The weather outside's getting nice. I find myself anytime I'm walking around outside, I find myself I'll walk by a flower bush or a tree that's got flowers on it. And I have a real stop and smell the flowers kind of attitude towards everything. It's really difficult for me to get back into the idea of the grind, right? The grind set. I'm finishing up my certificate to teach English as a second language, and it means I'm going to have to get into the job search again. I'm going to be on the grind to find the job, especially as other employment opportunities start to shrink and dry up, and as it is. But it's just so difficult for me to want to get the career, get the full-time job. Let's go out there, guys. Let's work the. I'm just why? Why? I see other people in my life who are kind of on that grind, and I see how difficult it is. And I see what it costs them, and I see the sacrifices that they have to make. And they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't. That's the thing that's so, upsetting about living in this reality right now is for people who to just have a family. Just the spouse, the kid, the car, the and on and on. It's too much. We're asking too much of people. Capitalism is asking too much of people. People should work less. People should not work as hard as they do. And the fact that the response from the capitalist class to people who are saying, hey, we're struggling here. It's tough out here. The fact that the only real response that you get is work harder tells you that the capitalist class has become just utterly unhinged. The ownership class is, the ruling class is demented. The let them eat cake kind of detached from reality delusional stuff. And we're starting to see the populace kind of come around. They're starting to realize nah, bruh, you guys don't really do much of anything and we work. I saw something very recently that I think is pretty indicative of this. Yeah. CEOs are uniquely prone to AI psychosis because they're sufficiently distant from the last mile of work that still has to happen to generate most value with AI. So when they play with AI, they see the happy path results, often not considering the next 20 or 10 or 20 things that have to happen to get sustainable results from agents. Look, I made this awesome product prototype. Yes, but you didn't have to review the code before it went into production and fix a bunch of issues. Look, I created a contract. Yes, but you didn't verify all the terms before it goes out to the counterparty and didn't have to wire up all the past contracts to work with. The best thing you can do as a CEO is to use AI a ton to figure out the real implications of agents in the enterprise and come out the other side with an appreciation for both the upside and the real work that goes into them. So this is a pretty soft quote, one that's pretty still sympathetic to CEOs and owners generally. But the undertone of it and the reality of it is CEOs do not do work. They don't know anything. Right? This is why AI is considered this thing that's going to replace everybody and everything's going to be a thing, because the people who are making the decisions are completely detached from what the concept of work even is. They think that what they do is work, and they're worthless. They're worthless. They do nothing at all. And we've structured a society structurally, so that the people who are least competent and who are the stupidest get the most power and get to say that they are the most competent. That's the insanity of the modern day society and the modern day structure. Your owners are dumb. These are probably the stupidest people who have ever lived. Who have ever lived. A rural farmer who has never read a book is smarter than these people. And we're just living in it. We're just living in their imagined reality, which, surprise, surprise, is stupid. Subscribe, maybe. Hello there, good to see you. Peanut Butter Beatrice. Resistance is futile, apparently. Yeah, I'm just consistently blown away with the level of compliance. That we're all just sort of complying. That there isn't even the concept of everyday rebellion. You know? Like, not everyone is going to be, like, picking up a gun and organizing a militia and, like, doing all that kind of stuff. But there's no concept of, like, the everyday rebellion. That this is a system that should be rebelled against. Like, we not only do we have the right, we have the duty to rebel against it. We should not be participating in our own downfall. And we are. We just are. And we're looking to people like Avi Lewis here in Canada to the degree that we are looking towards him. Or like Zoran Mamdani. We consider it a major success that he's like, he got $9 million. He got Amazon to pay the $9 million in taxes that they owed. Okay. Like, okay. And it's just getting pretty obvious that there is not going to be a political force come out of the West that actually says, with clarity, that these people should not have power at all. Like, they should have zero power. People like Larry Fink should simply not have power. They should not be involved in the system of power. They should not be making decisions. Their voices should not be heard. We should ignore them. And they should not be taken seriously. Because they're obviously clowns. Whose job is to grind reality into dollar bills. And fundamentally, I think that that's the core of the issue. That we are caught in a cultural malaise where we all fundamentally believe that money matters, that money is the center of our thinking, and because we think that, we're leading ourselves completely and totally into disaster. Like, a guy like Larry Fink makes sense if you think money matters, if you think money is the reason we're alive. If you think money makes the world go around, then Larry Fink is somebody who you're like, yeah, we should pay attention to this guy. He's the master of money. He's the owner of an enormous amount of property, and he controls all of this assets based on the financial system and financialization. And guys like Donald Trump are considered serious because they have a lot of money, right? And that's going to be a major, major, major problem in this reality for a long time. Freestyle Skate, good to see you. Hello from New Jersey. ICE is attacking us. We will not let down. Solidarity with all forever. Yeah, ICE is quietly rolling out a $55 billion crematorium network. Always remember, right? We have the resources to solve all of our problems. The housing problem, the housing crisis, easy solve. Not a problem. Like, this is the part of the conversation that I just think is what makes us so embarrassing as a people. Is that the problems that we have are solvable. Are solvable. And with easy solves. Like, really, really simple, straightforward stuff. Like, literally, it would be over in a day. And everybody knows what the solutions are. But instead of that, we're going to spend a whole bunch of money building a crematorium network on behalf of ICE. Like, what do you think they're going to use that for, guys? Like, what do you think is happening in your country? Hull, good to see you. And so it's just, I don't know, this last few weeks, like, I'm so beyond the angsty part of this anymore. The like, oh no, It's guys, it's happening. We have to all get together and stop it. Like, no, that's not gonna happen. People are listening to Hassan Piker and like are still bought into the idea that the electoral system is going to meaningfully respond somehow. Like, there's no, and when people do organize, say like organize with like Trotsky groups and stuff, like we're a clownish society. This is a cartoon society, a parody society. Something you would see on Rick and Morty as a parody of a rational civilization, right? And so that leaves me, and likely you, in a position where we just have to live through this, right? We just have to live through this clownish society as it consumes itself and eats itself, and listen to the excuses and the justifications and the whining and the complaining and the absurd nonsense that this childish cult culture of this death cult culture comes up with to explain why we can't spend $1 to help people who are living in tent cities, but we can absolutely spend an infinite amount of money to bomb children in Iran and destroy schools in Iran, and roll out a crematorium network for a secret police system that exists in the United States. Like, it's so beyond parody. It's so beyond satire. Like, satire and parody are dead. Like, you can't satirize this. I watch the parody outlets, right? Like The Onion or the Beaverton, right? And they try to satirize stuff. And you know what they end up doing? They end up just copy pasting what's going on, essentially. They just take what's going on and just do it. And it's like, yeah, reality is a parody of itself. And we can't seem to prevent it or stop it. Over on Twitch, the 27 Club, from Fetterman to Platner. Thanks, Hassan. I don't know that I understand your comment, but I mean, for me, like, Hassan Piker has just become like, hey, everybody, let's vote Democrat. We just need to change the Democratic Party and funnel everybody into the Democratic Party so that the Democratic Party will solve our problems. And it's just like, it's cartoon shit. Hull writes, how are you coping with the heat? Climate. Each summer is becoming hotter and hotter, isn't it? Climate change is real, not a joke. So the important thing to remember when it comes to climate change is so here in Toronto, we've actually had an unusually cold spring. And that's what's actually happening with climate change. Like, when we think of climate change, we think of increasing heat, and and what it really means is more extreme versions of weather. Right? It yes, that comes with extreme heat. That when the heat is here, it will be hot. It'll be hotter. But it also means extreme cold. That when the cold is here, it will be colder. And it means extreme hurricanes. That when the hurricanes come, they will be more extreme. And so I have yet to experience the extreme heat of this year. I assume it's coming. Like, July, August is when we get the real heat. But really, it's been cold here. It's been, and not extremely cold, but colder than usual. Because it's still spring for us. We're going into summer soon. Peanut Butter Beatrice, I often wonder what sort of curveball climate change will throw us and how much time we really have left. Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it interesting, right? Like, we don't really know what's coming next. And that reality often has a way of flummoxing our best laid plans. And it's even funnier for us because we don't make plans. We don't believe in the concept of planning. We don't really believe in having foresight or wisdom. We believe in market forces, which really, when you crack open what are quote-unquote market forces, what's the stock market, when you crack these open, you just begin to realize that it's the opinion of maybe 100 people. And then when you kind of retroactively recognize all of the rhetoric and myth-making around the concept of the market, anytime they say, like, yeah, we need the invisible hand of the market, or we just need to let the market decide, really what they were saying is, yeah, we just need the rich people to make decisions. That's really all that it's ever been. It's just a complete and total bending of the knee and a fealty to like 100 families who essentially control all of the wealth in the country. And like the plan for them with this climate change crisis is so obvious. Like, it's so just blatantly obvious what they're going to do. They will abandon us. Like, when famines start, when things start getting crazy, they'll just go to their bunkers or go to their walled off communities and have armed guards and create like little palaces for themselves and shoot anybody who shows up. Like, and throw them in a crematorium. Like, it's not a mystery at all what these guys are going to do. The things that have been slowing the development of the populace down and the recognition of the populace down is that most people are generally good. Like, they have the concept of empathy, right? Most people have that. And so they assume that everyone has that, and they operate from that. And so that puts a limit to the imagination, right? It creates an inability to perceive the bleak, dark, like satanic level evil, the Nazi heart of these owners and rulers. Like, they genuinely, like, most people actually believe that if we showed up at the doorstep of a billionaire and we're like, sir, please, we have nothing and we need a little bit of money or a little bit of food to feed our children, that the billionaire would be like, oh goodness, here's some food, oh God, let me help. And instead they'll get shot, because that's what's going to happen, right? Like, people like Elon Musk, like the Palantir CEOs, like, these guys are Nazis, and they're absolutely going to just retreat into their palaces and abandon you. And they'll have like drones. Like, they'll have like AI hardware that's just set on like, yeah, if it moves, shoot it. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, it won't even be a human. That's the part about the story that it's just going to be like they'll have like robot dogs with like rocket launchers and stuff. Like, it won't even be people. And the people whose job it is to like maintain the robots, they'll never even see, like, they'll be so removed from what's going on, it'll be like a video game for them, right? Like, they're creating this fake false reality, this delusional, illusional reality. Like, Jeff Bezos the other day actually said out loud, you can raise my taxes and it won't help a nurse in New York, right? Yes, it will. Like, it objectively will. Like, this is how detached and delusional and, like, fraudulent and stupid these people are. That they either don't understand how anything works and are too stupid to understand it, or they do understand and they think that we are stupid, right? Which, I mean, the evidence is there to show that that's the case. So you might as well, right? You might as well tell whatever lie you can possibly tell, because we're very gullible and we believe lots of things. But for Jeff Bezos to say, like, you can raise my taxes and it won't help that nurse, and yes, it will. It objectively will. Like, he's basically saying, if you take $1 billion from me and give it to someone else, it won't improve their life. It's like, yes, it will. Yes, it absolutely will. And so we're entering this moment, or we have entered, it's not even entering, but we have entered this moment where the people who are governing us, the actual owners, and I'm not talking about like Donald Trump, I'm talking about guys like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. It's just becoming obvious that these people are delusional, that they're detached from reality, that they have no empathy, they have no ethics, they care exclusively about themselves, and they view themselves as gods. And we're not really interested in stopping them. Like, at this point, we're basically just like throwing stones and being like, boo, hiss, you guys suck. And they're standing there being like, what? And that's it. That's as far as it's going. That's probably as far as it will ever go here in America. Ong, good to see you. Dave, good to see you too. Ong writes, illiterate farmers innovated more productivity than CEOs ever will. Hell, a slave boy invented the most efficient manner of pollinating vanilla flowers back in the 19th century. Yeah, it's usually the people who are working with the product that innovated, right? Like, it's usually the people who are actually like hands-on, I have the product, I am working with the thing. Those are the people who come up with the best ideas. And those people are often ignored or forgotten about or completely removed from the historical record, right? Because they present it to whoever's around them. And if you're a slave, right, who you're presenting it to, probably a slave owner, and the slave owner takes credit, right? Some just like white Confederate slaver. And it isn't until like someone comes back around and is like, yeah, that guy didn't seem to know what he was talking about. Like, who actually did this? That anything is given credit to anybody. And that's how the system of capital works. Like, that's essentially the patent system. That's essentially the copyright system. It's just, you know, rich, detached psychos taking credit for things that they know nothing about. I mean, that's Elon Musk to a T, right? That's his entire career. Yuan Buchanan, good to see you, my man. New Orleans being swallowed up by Poseidon's oceans is going to cause problems for Americans as Americans' quality of life declines and its infrastructure crumbles away. Yeah. I think the funniest thing happening today is this data center stuff. The reason why I think it's so funny, and it's hilarious to me. What these detached, psychopathic billionaires and CEOs are trying to do with AI, they're trying to get into a foot race with God. That reality has natural systems. Reality has natural systems that it naturally relies on, it naturally connects with, right? Elaney, good to see you. Over on Twitch. The 27 Club, good to see you. The reality has natural systems, right? It has natural cycles. It has a natural life cycle. It has the universal life cycle is everything is born, everything grows, everything lives, everything decays, everything dies. And that's the cycle. That's the circle of life. It's the circle of life. It's how it is. And you can either run with it or run counter to it. And what these billionaires are trying to do is they're trying to erect a system, an institution, a technology in AI that separates them and separates itself from the natural systems, from reality itself. That's the attempt. And of course it won't work. Like, really think about like data centers. Like, think about how stupid this is. Like, you're going to plop down in every state or every city or whatever it is you think you're going to put these places, data centers, so that you can have everyone's data, so that you can create like a neural network to create like a a false mind or an artificial intelligence, if you like, a new god of a new era. And it's going to be powered by all of our resources, like all our water, right? All of our food, all of our electricity, everything. It'll suck up all the resources of the world, right? In order to do it. And you think that's going to last? Like, you think this clearly unsustainable model that you're putting together is going to outpace reality? Like, you think that reality is going to actually be like, oh yeah, this is a thing that should be taken seriously and that we should keep. Like, this is going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart, and it's going to fall apart really bad. It's going to collapse in really fun and hilarious ways. And it's just going to be completely abandoned. There's this, I found this interesting little, this one really struck me because I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. There it is. In the 1830s, everyone in the USA knew that canal waterways were the future of commerce. Every state started building a canal network with the vision of hooking them all to a national network. In 1837, there was a Great Recession, and the tax base for the canal work collapsed. When the economy recovered 5 years later, the railroad boom was happening and everyone knew that canals were over. That's why every city in the Midwest has a half-finished canal in it. This is a post about data centers. Like, we're going to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars. So much money that we could, like, literally end homelessness, cure poverty. Everyone could have, like, a really decent quality of life, just bumping along, living a normal life, right? And instead, we're going to build data centers. Yeah, the 27 Club, yeah. So you're saying the movie In Time was a prediction where the rulers feed off the labor of everyone else, but the value gets turned into lifespan increases for the ownership class? Yeah, I mean, that's basically what they've always tried to do. Like, these people are vampires. They do nothing of value. They provide no service. They provide no resources. They exist as an institution exists. And they exist essentially with the permission of the society. And if the society suddenly went, wait, why do we give a shit about Elon Musk? Who gives a fuck about this guy? Let's take everything away from him. We could do that. It wouldn't be difficult. Like, if the power structure had the people in it who were saying that would happen, and it would happen very quickly. So they aren't there by some kind of natural law, right? They aren't God kings. They aren't bestowed upon us by the universe. They're just hacks and losers who managed to be born in the right place at the right time and bribe a bunch of people. Eleni writes, it's not even about the data centers. It's that every billionaire and every company needs their own data center for AI streaming and their websites. Yeah. If we get rid of capitalism, we could get rid of like 75% of data centers. I mean, data centers that exist before AI too. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about something that I talk about all the time, which is this cartoonish, clownish idea that somehow capitalism is the most efficient, productive model. And it's the argument goes that, competition breeds innovation, right? If you have a competitor, then it means that you need to provide the best product and blah, 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 on and it goes. But really what happens is that you're just doubling your productive costs, right? Like and that's only if you have two. So you have two people trying to make the same product. So you're just doubling your productive costs. Compare that to a society that says, we're going to make this product and we're going to all come together and we're all going to work on how to make this product. Okay, well then you have one production chain, right? You need to pay for it once. Like, which one of these two do you actually think is going to be the most efficient? Which one of these two do you think is actually cost the less in terms of resource development? And that's not even talking about like how there is corporate espionage and the undercutting. And so you have entire industries that get erected on this idea that you're going to have competing models and that the competing models will come together and that'll increase efficiency. But what actually happens is that your competing models, so you'll have like a Samsung phone and an iPhone. Well, then they all have their own different little bullshit parts, and they all have their own little different bullshit connectors and plugins, and they have their own little bullshit things that you have to get, and they don't interact with one another at all. And so you literally have twice the resources spent, probably more, because of all the like backbiting corporate espionage lawsuits that come forward, because you just say like, yeah, this is a better way of doing things for sure. And the idea that they need to make a better product than the other guys, like, no, they don't. They like literally don't. Like, they collude with one another. And this idea of like capitalist innovation, all this kind of, it completely falls right in line with the idea that growth is infinite and eternal forever. That it is actually possible to make a better version of something 100% of the time. And it's just not true. Like, there is a best version of something. Like, you create something that is the thing. Eventually you can't iterate on it anymore. But the capitalist religion insists that's not the case. That infinite iteration is always possible, is the theory. It's just not true. It's just not true. That eventually you do find the thing. That it does it. Like, as I'm saying it, the thing that pops into my head is Heinz ketchup. Like, Heinz ketchup, they did it. That's the best ketchup. You can't make a better ketchup than that. That if you have like Heinz ketchup or like catsup, you can taste the difference and it's worse. Like, Heinz ketchup is so perfect to what they need that like 4-star Michelin Thai chefs are like, yeah, Heinz ketchup. You need a cup of Heinz ketchup in your recipe, and it's exactly what it is. It's the perfect blend of everything, and there are lots of things in the world that are like this. That this is just the perfect. Like, you can't make a more perfect Q-tip. Like, it's exactly what you need to do the thing that it does, right? You can't make a more perfect Band-Aid. It is what it is. Like, it's just. But the capitalist system insists that you can, and moreover that you should, and so you should waste all your resources with alternative production chains in order to do this. And like on and on it goes, and you end up in these ridiculous situations where like, well, if capitalists start to undercut people and make a worse product, then a new guy will come along and make a better product and take all of their. It's like, no, they won't. They'll just get bought out. Right? Like, these industries are $100 billion, $1 trillion industries. They're not just going to allow a competitor to exist. So there's this just like childish religious wonder that's required to be a capitalist today. Yeah, how can 10 companies grow infinitely without causing a monopoly? I believe in magic more than that. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. We're at this moment where the people who are still believing in capitalism as a positive force in the world are, like, they believe in magic. They're not any different than a flat earther. And it's gotten so clearly obvious that that's the case. That this is the reason. Like, capitalists never make arguments based on economic positions anymore. They don't actually have economic principles. They don't talk about economics ever because they know that they can't. That if they were to do that, that they would essentially be justifying a wage slave system, right? And so they don't. That when they discuss capitalism, they discuss it from a like moral, ethical, religious position. That there's this invisible hand and a force and all things will be better if we do these things. And you're like, how? Like, can you get into some nuts and bolts actually discussing the actual system that exists? No, you can't. Oh, it's because it's a slave system. And you know it's a slave system. Like, they're aware. Like, they discuss us like we're cattle. Like, that's how they talk about us. That when the ownership class actually talks about their own system, they'll say things with they'll say things like lower value human capital, right? Like, we're just a commodity to them. We're just labor. Like, we're not a human, right? We're certainly not their peer. They don't view us as equals. Like, this iteration of Nazism, like this iteration of fascism, rather, is like the subhumans are not black people or Jews. The subhumans are humans. Like, this is the reality that we're in now, right? Like, we're in this AI world where they're discussing AI. And of course, the people who control and own the AI are going to be the god kings of the new generation, and the subhumans will be humans. And that anybody who doesn't actually have access to capital, i.e. 99.999999999% of us, will just be considered a subhuman. And if you rebel against it in a significant way, then ICE will show up, round you up, and throw you in their crematoriums. Like, this is the reality that they're making. This is the universe that they're creating. And they're well aware that the way to govern and the way to rule is with fear. Right? They know that Chris Hedges recently said it just nakedly, that politics is about fear. Politics is a fear-based system. That the people who have power, like Mark Carney is the perfect example of this. He just says out loud in front of everybody, and everybody like bobs their head and is like, oh, I guess that makes sense, that we have to stop governing based on how we want the world to be, but based on how it is. Like, he'll just say that, and everybody just was like, yeah, that makes sense, it's common sense. Like, literally, he's telling you to shut the fuck up about having ideas. He's literally saying to you, stop talking about trying to reform the system of capital. He's literally saying to you, like, hey, stop saying that you should have a better quality of life, right? Hey, you know that thought you have where you go like, hey, yeah, I should have more than this, or my neighbor should have more than this, right? Like, shut up about that, right? That's not going to happen. We need to govern based on what the world actually is. And what the world actually is a pro-slavery, anti-human environment that tells you to train the models that will replace you. That's what's actually happening. So step 2. Right? Like, that's what he says. He just says it really, like, plainly and nicely in a way that isn't so offensive. So you're just like, yeah, I guess so. Duh. Well, off to work for people I hate. In a job that I know is pointless. For no reason whatsoever. Yeah, well, I watch my children suffocate in an environment that's betraying them. That's the Canadian way. That's who we are. One, Buchanan writes, these billionaires have truly been exposed for how stupid they are. Most of them aren't more intelligent than your typical 7-year-old, and even that's an insult because you have children much smarter. Yeah, I'd say, like, Elon Musk certainly has the intellectual capacity of, like, maybe a 10-year-old. Like, they're not smart people. They're certainly not wise, right? Like, they have no wisdom whatsoever. They just are... these are guys that just needed to get hugged by their parents more, you know? Like, if Elon Musk had have been told by his father that he was proud of him and that he loved him, like, I think that we would have avoided a lot of this. JT writes, there's a skit of a robber baron laughing about taking money from workers, then Bezos is there and going, and they shouldn't be allowed to go to the bathroom, and the baron is like, that's fucked. Yeah. Yeah, like, even the robber barons of yore, like... The robber barons of yore were pretty aware of what was going on. Like, they kind of knew. They were aware that there was an injustice to all of this. That they knew that, like, yeah, slavery's fucked, but it is what it is, and the slaves revolt, and it's like, okay, like it makes sense. But that's why you get sort of a piecemeal concession system. That's why liberalism is an idea that makes sense, right? If you're living in an environment where the property holders and the capitalists are somewhat rational, and you can actually like negotiate with them because they're capable of that, then liberalism makes a lot of sense. You can say, like, okay, we have sort of this stable environment somewhat, and so we could negotiate piecemeal reform from these rational actors who will acquiesce, right, and who will give, like, a piecemeal reform and will bend the knee to a rising populace. I don't think these guys are ever going to do that. Like, I genuinely think that someone like Elon Musk, I think that he would rather, like, fight a civil war with like robots and shit than ever like give $1 to a starving child. Like I really think that's how demented it's gotten, and I think that the dementia is heavily rooted in the religion of capitalism. That the religion of capitalism has always somewhat been there. There's always been this like religious ethos that has permeated the system of capital to justify itself, but not to this degree. This is new. Like this is very, very new. And I think that's why I don't see anybody write about it, or I don't see anything written about it. Because and when people do write about it, it's kind of offhanded or on the side. There's a kind of facetiousness about it almost, where people will say it in a kind of a sarcastic way. But nobody actually takes seriously the idea that, yeah, like, money is a god, like a literal god. Like, we worship it as a literal god. Not an offhanded parody, satire, snide, sarcastic comment on the side. Like, that is a god that we worship. And I don't see any people really, writing significantly or investigating significantly the objective, obvious reality that money is being worshipped as a god. And that tells me that this is very new. Like, we've crossed a threshold now, and that our rulers are not the same as they were in the past. Because in the past, they understood that, like, yeah, money is power. I have power if I have money. But I understand, like, other people want money too, and that I live in a society. And so if politicians come to me and say, hey, like, we're taking some of that money and we're going to put it over here because we have, like, people with pitchforks who are going to come for us. The billionaire class might grumble about it, and they might be like, "Grr, about it, but they don't have, like, a religious fervor about it. They don't have, like, a justification system that says, yeah, those people should starve so I can have an extra $1 in a bank account somewhere." But now they do. Now they are like that. That guys like Jeff Bezos, and Jeff Bezos says it. He just says it. That he doesn't think that taxing him will improve the quality of life for anybody, which is just, like, objectively false. In a very, like, 1 + 1 = 2 kind of a way. Like, and that's such a stupid thing to say that you can only believe it if you have, like, a religious fervor. Like like a Zionist evangelical fundamentalism. So to me, this is the thing that needs to be mainly discussed widely in the society. That our rulers have fallen into, like, a flat earther kind of level of delusional religious fervor. And the reason why I think that's so important for us to have these conversations about is because you can't negotiate with that. So it is the full-scale death of liberalism. That liberalism relies on the concept of negotiation. It relies on the idea of piecemeal reformism. It relies on the idea that you negotiate with those who have power to provide relief and piecemeal reform to those without power. That's its central plank. And that's gone. You can't negotiate with these people. They're not capable of rational thought. Like, and they say it to you, like right in front of your face. Like, Peter Thiel is literally walking around talking about the Antichrist and shit like that. Like, this is dementia. This is a demented society that has become completely unmoored from itself. And at least there are voices now that are starting to say, like, I see more and more people, like I saw Tim Dillon give like a really, really great rant about how the Trump administration is the greatest con in history, right? And it is. Like, the Trump administration ran probably one of the greatest cons in history. But to me, my response to that would be, yeah, the only way he was able to run the con is because we've become so gullible, right? Like, I don't think a guy like Donald Trump would have been that successful in the 60s, right? I don't think that you could have been this successful as someone like Donald Trump in 1880, right? That it requires these conditions. It requires this level of gullibility and this level of illiteracy and this level of a stupefied populace to allow someone like Donald Trump to take power. And so I don't think Donald Trump ran a very good con on everybody. I think that we are just more gullible and more stupid and more religiously naive than we have been in our history, I think. And that religious naivety, I think, comes from a denial of who humanity is or what humanity is and what it requires. Like, we are religious, and if we don't have something to grab hold to, then we'll grab hold of something mundane, and we have. Santora, hello, good to see you. One moment, we have too much energy, so we need to release it. Yet let the AI influx show the weakness of those who walk the earth. The minds which do not seek beyond the surface have become known. Those who disregard life are known. Let us know and learn. It's very epically biblical, Santora. JT writes, the bizarre thing that dystopic movies don't depict is that China and socialist states will be existing while the fascist nations act like their reality is the only reality. Yeah. I think that that's right. That there is this, like, you do have a rising power in China and a rising power in Southeast Asia that has acted somewhat as a counterbalance to all of this. That the to me, the brilliance of China has been their integration into Western systems so that if the West goes to war with China, it will devastate the West. That's really the power move. Like, that's the checkmate that the Chinese have done. That if the West goes to war with China, key critical resources that China provides will be withheld. And so you can't successfully launch a war against China as America. Checkmate, right? Checkmate. They got them. And they got them through Marxist economics, right? They got them. And this is allowing China a lot of leeway, a lot of wiggle room. And we're going to see how they do it. It's worth repeating because I've been sort of dwelling and thinking about more and more the criticism for China, right? How do we criticize China as a Marxist or as an anti-capitalist? And you guys know my position on China, right? I think China has been dealing with the system of capital for decades and is a country that was at war with capitalism in the capitalist West and has basically been forced into a situation where it has to capitulate and bend the knee and work with the system of capital as much as it can. So the But the critique for China, I think, is that China's citizens are just as susceptible to the religion of capital as anybody is. And it's the religion of capital that really empowers the economic systems of capital. That if you have bought in to the religion of capital, then you will allow your economic structures to become capitalist structures because you believe in the goodness and the idea of the self, the power of money, right, and the concept of an invisible hand of a market being important, and that you can have whatever structure and system you want in place, but if your people fall prey to a religious ideology, and in this case it's the religious ideology of capital, then that will infect your ruling systems. And eventually your whole ruling system is filled with people who are religiously inclined to believe in this concept of capitalism and will structure their society in order to do it. And I don't know that I see enough coming out of China to prevent that, right? That if China was really serious about Marxism, about getting rid of this capitalist ideology, then they would have school children read Marx, right? They have schools. They could have school children read the principles of communism. So that, to me, is what I keep my eye out for with China. That China can fall prey to a religious ideology just like anybody else can. Austin, good to see you. Pam Bondi was diagnosed with cancer. Yeah, bye, Pam Bondi. Go say hi to the devil for me. Freestyle skate. Under feudalism, people know their place in society. They knew who were their rulers. Today, people don't know shit despite the influx of free and accessible resources to get to that conclusion. Well, one of the things that's interesting is that there is kind of this idea under feudalism, like, people know who the Lord is. Like, it's really, really interesting because the what we call the Dark Ages, right, or what historians are now trying to call the Middle Ages, because the reason why we call it the Dark Ages is because we don't have a lot of information from that period of time. The Roman Empire has fallen, so there's no record-keeping infrastructure, right? And the only record-keeping infrastructure that we really have through the Middle Ages are monks, basically. Just people who are living in, like, churches and stuff. That this church system has arisen from the fall of the Roman Empire. And it's these guys that are essentially, like, keeping notes. But they're not, like, keeping, like, big, gigantic, huge, enormous records of everything. They're basically just saying, like, okay, this day this person was born, and this day this person died. And, like, it's essentially like a diary that we have. And there's a phenomenon that happens throughout the Middle Ages that people don't really realize. Like, all records were kept on paper and papyrus, right? And these things decay and they degrade. It's very difficult to maintain a history for a long period of time. And so you need to copy, right? Every couple hundred years, you need to copy resources, right? You need to copy one text to another text to preserve it. But you end up in a situation where there's not really a huge centralized institutional body who has the resources to be able to successfully do that. So I'm making up numbers here, but like, so you'll have like 1,000 scrolls that have been written, right? But you only have the resources and the time to copy 200. So 800 of the scrolls that were written are going to degrade and are going to decay and are going to disappear. You're not going to be able to recopy them. They're just going to go away. And so what gets copied, right? Well, and what gets copied is based on the purview and the opinion of the copier, of the person who's doing it. And so there's this real theory, or this really a real historical idea that, like, yeah, a lot of the information and the ideas that we have from the past, like what we think people from the past were talking about at that time, has been completely colored by this idea that the copier was this like pigeonhole, was this like what's that called, bottleneck of information. So we have all of the text of Saint Aquinas, for example. And so we here during our period of time are like, oh, these people really, they thought St. Aquinas was the shit. Like, but then you find out that the guy doing the copying work was like his specialty, and the thing he loved was St. Aquinas. And it turns out that there's like a whole bunch of saints that were all writing at that time and were giving information, but the guy copying it only copied St. Aquinas. And so the only ideas we have from that period of time are St. Aquinas' ideas, right? And so there's this real blackout of information that comes out of the Middle Ages because of this. Because just so much information and so much of their culture and so much of what they were saying and doing and talking about just doesn't survive because they don't have the infrastructural support to be able to do it. They don't have the technological support. And it isn't until you get to the printing press, right? It isn't until the printing press happens that finally we're like, oh, we can just like we can just shit out this stuff. Like we can go from literally a monk with a candle in a room handwriting texts to like Shoshank fall, Shoshank fall, Shoshank fall, Shoshank fall, right? And because there's this sort of historical blackout, we don't actually know what they knew. Like, we don't actually know really what feudal people were talking about, and we don't really know what they knew. And there's a theory that says, like, there's a theory that many of these feudal kingdoms or feudal empires, that you would have like a peasantry, people living on the land, right, who basically viewed themselves and the knights and the lords as all peers, as all equals. That they saw themselves as like, yeah, your job is administration, right? Like, your job as the lord is to communicate with other fiefdoms around us, to negotiate with that. And then, of course, if you're a knight, your job is to, like, see to the defense of the kingdom, and then also, like, deal with internal conflicts that exist, right? But that's just our role. We don't actually view that as more important than going out to the field and planting wheat. And, in fact, we have examples of, like, festivals where you'd have, like, an inversion of roles. So you'd have a festival where a peasant would become the lord, and like the peasants would become the knights, and the knights would become the peasants, and they would all have this like change of roles that would happen throughout this festival. And so you have examples of like feudal places where they don't really, like, you're not defined by the role that you are, you're defined by your humanity. And that they all did see themselves as peers and equals in all of this, which is fascinating. And of course, that's not all across Europe. That's not how it completely is 100%, but you do have pockets of this. And and then there's also the example of, like, they didn't actually think that the king was going to become a thing. That when the king starts to become an institution, the idea of the king is literally like all the lords getting together and be like, hey, we're concerned about these Muslims. Like, there's these Muslims over here, man. Like, and we don't really know what they're doing. And we're all kind of just like independent, fracas little fiefdoms. Probably we should have somebody whose job it is to be like, sup, Muslims? Like, we see you have 10,000 men sitting there. we should also have 10,000 men to be like, hey, what's up? Like, you gonna fuck with us, right? Well, how are we gonna do that? Well, we need a guy to go around and organize that, don't we? Well, I don't want to do that. That's the funniest part about the rise of the monarchy in Europe, is that nobody wanted the job. Because the job sucked. Your job is to leave your home, right? Go around Europe to the other loyal fiefdoms that exist, beg for resources, men, grain, gold, round all this up, organize it all, right? So you're organizing like an army of strangers, basically, that exist in a very, like, that are unified under very sort of loose ideas and concepts. The religion becomes very important during this period of time for this reason. And then you're marching them off towards a group of other dudes, and you're like, yeah, we gotta make sure these Muslims aren't gonna come over here and take what's ours, essentially. And that's essentially where the monarchy comes from. An early feudal law, like, if you were the king and you showed up, and you can see this in like Shakespearean plays, and you can see this in a lot of their art. It's not explicitly stated, but you understand the dynamic exists. If you're the king and you show up to a lord's land, the power hierarchy is the lord and then the king. That the king has power with his own army and his own kind of people, but if he's on the lord's land, then the hierarchy is the lord and then the king. And so if the king tries to give the lord orders, the lord can be like, get the fuck out of here. This is my land. Shut up. And that's how it was structured. And it's only later on that they lose sort of institutional control of this. And by later on, I mean like generations and generations. Because hilariously, the first king is chosen through a vote. That the first king, basically they all say, nobody wants this job, but we have to have this job. So let's vote on it and pick a guy. And so they do. They pick a guy. And the guy's like, ugh, I hate this. Go fuck yourselves. I'll do it because, you know, for love of country and all that. But then eventually, as one does, that guy dies, right? And when he dies, it really raises the question of like, okay, well, who's the king? And the lords contend with the idea of like, we could have another vote. But then they just say, nah, just have a son do it. His son can do it. Right? And it really is done with that kind of attitude. It really is done with this attitude of just like, we don't, everybody has to get together again. We all have to leave and go over here and like have a big conversation about it. And whoever gets picked is going to be pissed. And it's going to be a whole thing. And it'll kick up a whole bunch of buckets. I don't want to do it. And everybody's like this. Everybody is like this. All the lords are just like, oh my God. And so they all kind of just like look at one another and are just kind of like, we could just say his son. Yeah, we could just say his son can do it. Yeah. And so they do. And so his son is just like, what? They're like, yeah, it's you. Yeah, we put it to a vote and we just say it's you. You're the son. You're closest to it. You've seen it happen. You know how it works. Just do it. And the son is like, all right. And so he does. And then he has a son, and then he has a son, and then he has a son. And eventually it's like, I have been chosen by the divine God. I am the ruler of England, and then I am the ruler of France. I am here by God's decree. I have been chosen by the hand of the Lord to be your king. That's really how it went. But if you're a peasant living in France, you don't necessarily see that happening, right? Like, and if you're a lord living in France, let alone a peasant, right? You don't necessarily see this happening. You don't necessarily understand that, like, oh, we are erecting a feudal institution that will become the center, like, ruling power. And of course what happens is that each king, as they're erected, right, well, their initial threat is the Muslims, but eventually it's the English, right, or the French. And the monarchs start to fight amongst one another, and they fight amongst one another on exactly the terms that you would think that they would fight amongst one another, which is, I want that piece of land, or, hey, your wife is hot and I'd like to fuck her. Like, and it becomes, like, really stupid. And there's just, like, really stupid things that happen because your king ends up being some snot-nosed brat who's never worked a day in his life and is just, like, a total fucking loser who's straight up just like, I'd like to have 15 wives. You're just like, okay, whatever, man. Like, and it's, like, it's no small mystery, like, it's no small wonder why the monarchy as a system starts to decay and starts to fall apart. Because it was always kind of erected on a set of loose principles that were sort of dumb in the first place, right? And eventually you just have wealthy merchants and capital owners eventually start to be like, yeah, we don't really think we want to be negotiating with you guys that much anymore. Like, you're pretty dumb. Like, you do dumb things all the time, and we don't like that. We would prefer to be left alone. And so the power of the monarchy diminishes in no small part from World War I and World War II. Nothing discredits an institution faster than, like, major conflicts you lose. And nobody wins in World War II. Like, nobody wins World War II. Nobody wins in World War I, frankly. But and the fact that the monarchies and the church were, like, going along with it and, like, really rah-rah-rahing it the whole time essentially discredits these institutions. That's why, just the other day, the Pope released his, what is that called? He released his, Necronomicon. He released his Eshlicon, his Excuscus, Estrasus, his Estras. There's a term. There's a Catholic term for when the Pope writes his encyclopedia. He writes his Eshlicon, his It's the most important thing that a pope does. Every pope is meant to write this. It's like his PhD thesis for being the pope. And his PhD thesis basically boils down to, we have to disarm AI. That's what he said. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Thanks, Pope. Thanks for your Eslicoplia. It starts with an E, I'm sure of it. N, I think it's N. Encyclical, yes. Encyclical. Thank you, Ong. I knew one of you was going to do it. Encyclical. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, Pope. Like, we should disarm AI. Yeah, fantastic. It's nice that the Catholic Church is saying that, but, like, I don't give a fuck what the Catholic Church has to say about anything. Like, not only does the Catholic Church, like, have this enormous black stain of supporting, of being, like, gung-ho in World War II, most of the Catholic Church supporting the Nazis during World War II. But they're also just, like, riddled with pedophilia. Like, I don't know why anybody actually thinks these guys should be taken seriously as a moral outlet for anything. It seems like in the modern period, they're like, it seems like they've all come together and they've sat down and they've been like, we have to at least project this. Like, we have to at least, like, sure, we'll rape children in the background, that's fine, but, like, we have to at least project the idea that we are capable or interested in a moral position in the world, right? And that seems like what they've done. The last couple of popes have been, like, well chosen, and the statements that the popes have made have actually been like, yeah, hey, maybe we should actually give a shit about our children. Like, maybe we should actually give a shit about the nature of reality and what's going on in the world. And it's been actually really fun to watch the popes stand up and talk, because every time a pope stands up and talk, some capitalist says, I disagree with the pope. And that's how you know that we're like lacking in complete wisdom, right? It is unwise to stand up and say I disagree with the Pope, especially when you're a moron. Like, especially when you have literally no leg to stand on whatsoever. But the religion of capital is just like real thick and real difficult. And so to stick the landing on that whole feudal conversation I was having, all the feudal peasants and really the feudal lords understood is, we're here. Like, that's it. Like, we're here and we have a system and we have to be within the system that we have. And my job is administration and your job is growing grain, and we have to negotiate with one another along those terms. And sometimes you have like really kind of quasi-charming stories. Like there's this great French lord. I went through a real period of time where I was looking at like French history and like who the lords actually were and like their history. And there's this French lord by the name of I believe his name was Oliver the Fat. I think that's right. So named because his name was Oliver, and guess what? He was fat. And people felt okay calling him Oliver the Fat because he was a pretty nice guy. Right? That he was the type that you'd be like, hey, it's Oliver the Fat. And he'd be like, oh, yes, I do like the food, And his brothers were always going to war with him to peel off pieces of land or for all those kind of reasons. His brothers can be bullies, right? And Oliver would always just acquiesce. He would always, and what's interesting about that is the peasants actually loved him for it, because you can get into these like familial conflicts where like my brother is attacking, we need to all come together and fight, and so all these peasants need to come together, and people die and war is hell and like all this kind of stuff, and that happens, right? That's part of the lord system and the monarchical system, but Oliver the Fat was just like, oh, yeah, you want that land? Yeah, we're not going to fight you for it, dude. Like, here. It's fine. I don't need it. Like, what do I need this for? Like, what's it matter to me? I'm certainly not going to ask these peasants to get together to fight you for it. Like, what are you talking about? And so the peasants loved him for it. They were just like, oh, yeah, great. Like, that's whatever. You're right. Like, we don't really need that. That's fine. and like, European monarchical history is full of silly sort of moments like this and silly, fun stories where familial internal fighting leads to ridiculous, silly situations that essentially boil down to the peasants just being like, oh, yeah, that's great. Or like, think about being a peasant and you're like on the border between France and Spain, right? And the Spaniards come in and they take over the land, and you're just like a peasant working the field, and the Spaniards come over to you and they say, hey, this land belongs to Spain now, and you're a peasant and you're like, oh, okay, well, what does that mean for me? And the Spaniards are like, oh, nothing really, like, you still gonna do the land and your family is doing that thing, it's fine. And we actually need less grain from you, so we're actually going to lower your taxes. You're like a feudal servant, and you're like, oh, okay, great. So all of the like above board stuff that happens, like the administrative part of it, for the feudal serfs, it just like didn't matter for the most part. Like it was all just sort of above their heads for the most part. One of my favorite things to talk about in feudal society is that feudal economies were extremely stable. And they were extremely stable because they were primarily built around just resource distribution, right? In like the truest sense of the word. So feudal economies, there were different iterations of this and different versions of it, but my favorite one was the tally stick, the tally stick system. So you'd literally have the administrator, who's the lord, right? He would have a stick, and this was the tally stick. And the stick had a series of notches in it. And in the notches, other smaller sticks would fit, right? And so every year, or every 7 years, there were differences. All of the tally sticks would be pulled in from the people, and they would tally them along the stick. And this is to make sure that there's no counterfeiting or any kind of bullshit happening, right? And then they would take all the tally sticks and they would redistribute them back into the society. And the purpose of the tally stick was so that a person could, like, go to somebody else and, like, trade for goods. And so it's money, right? But they understood that in kind of any iterating trading system, the money eventually collects under a small group of people, right? That there are, like, checkpoints and, like, bottlenecks within any economic structure. And so this eventually falls under a single person. And they kind of understood, yeah, that's not good, right? The whole point of this system is to trade for goods amongst yourself and to kind of streamline and smooth things out. And so every year they would just, like, destroy it, pull it in, redistribute. And stable economy, right? Just completely stable. Eventually, people start to convince monarchs, hey, don't pull that in. Just let me have it. Just let me have this wealth and I can do something with it, right? And so this is where the capitalist base really comes from. It's like this idea that, like, oh yeah, just let me keep most of the money and that's fine. Until eventually the capitalists have more power than the monarchs. Which is essentially where the capitalists come. Yeah, XD writes, sometimes the king's dipshit sons will destroy the realm because they fought over the crown right after their father told them not to and died. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's power, right? Like, we're heavily influenced by power. The dipshit sons are just like, I want to be the guy. Like, that's one of the funny things about humans, right? It's like, you want to be the guy. Who gives a fuck? Like, who cares if you're the guy? Like, I've never really put that together. And what's so funny is that it's the guys that are always fighting to be the guy always end up being shit rulers. They're always terrible. Like, if I was fighting to be the guy, if I was fighting to be, like, the ruler of the realm, you would think that you would be fighting to be the ruler of the realm to do something, right? To do something important or to do something cool. But quite often these guys just, like, they fight to be the guy and then they're the guy and then they're just, like, their whole reign is just being a dipshit, basically. But sometimes you can end up with, like King Louis the 14th, I believe. Like, if you go to France, there is just absolutely beautiful, gorgeous architecture all throughout France. You go to Paris, and it's just, like, absolutely lovely medieval architecture, and really so. And what that is that you have, like, one king, one time, who's just like, this place should be nice. This place should be nice, and everything should be lovely. Why don't we make everything nice and make everything lovely, right? And so they spend all their time and their resources making the place look cool. It's like, that I can respect. That's what makes these guys so embarrassing. Like the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs and all this kind of stuff. Like, they could be making this place super, super, super cool. And super interesting. Instead, they're just, like, wasting their time with, like, the metaverse. They're wasting their time, like, helping the U.S. military militarize space and pretend like, oh, this is the future of commerce. It's like, no, probably not. Like, you're just militarizing space. You got Peter Thiel, whose job it is to create a surveillance system on behalf of, like, the Zionists. You're just like, oh, okay. Like, you guys are, like, enormous losers. Like, enormous losers. Like, think about how much cooler everything could be. Like, can you imagine if someone like Mark Zuckerberg was just like, hey, we're gonna actually like go through the city of Boston, right? And we're just gonna make the city of Boston look super awesome. And we're just gonna make the place. We're gonna really go through with like some city planners, and we're gonna really go through with the populace. We're gonna talk about what people want, and we're just gonna do like an architectural revolution or restoration in the society, in the place. We could make the place look really cool. Like, that would be awesome. That would make me be like, oh, these guys, they're actually building something. They're actually doing something. Like Carnegie Hall is still around. Grand Central Station is still around. Like, a lot of the stuff that the robber barons of yore built is still around, and it's still there, and we're still using it, right? All the stuff that these guys are building basically goes away the moment they die. Like, it'll be like, it'll exist as an echo after the vulture capitalists break it apart. But everything they're making within kind of an abstraction space. Like, building a surveillance system on the back of like a data system. It just can't sustain itself. It can't survive for as long as you think it's going to. Like, we have such an enormous disrespect for reality and for time itself. Like, what, you think, you actually think a data system that requires like constant maintenance, constant updating, constant, like, you actually think that's going to survive for what, a couple hundred years? You actually think that this is the future? I don't think so, bro. Like, I really don't. Like, time chews things up. It eats things. And if you're not building something that can withstand the rigors of time and the rigors of reality, then it's going to fall apart. And we're definitely not doing that. Like, there's actually a genuine concern in historical departments of this era of time, the internet era, that because computers and computer technology and computer parts and things like this are so fragile, that they're just not going to last. Like, we can't pass them down from, like, data doesn't pass from generation to generation very easily. And so there's this real concern that we'll have like a black hole in our historical record because so much of our history is digitized and lives in sort of this digital realm. And this leads to people being like, okay, well, we need to print some of the stuff and copy some of the stuff. Just like how they printed and copied and created hard copies of the Epstein files. They're like, yeah, this should not be exclusively digitized. We should print this out and make hard copies of it. And in fact, we're going to make a library and put it in like a congressional wing so that people can go take a look at the Epstein files. That's wild, man. That's actually super wild. What a crazy story. Like, Donald Trump is going to get impeached, and he's going to get impeached like so hard. It's going to be like cartoonishly funny to watch. Cuz like all these mega guys and all the supporters are going to bellyache and cry all about it, but it's like, Brother Bear, like, Donald Trump is like, if you can't impeach Donald Trump, if Donald Trump doesn't face impeachment, like, seriously, then everything the communists are saying about your system is completely correct. In very, very obvious ways. Like, Donald Trump is very clearly the most corrupt president the United States has ever seen. He's doing things like suing the IRS to pay him for a scandal he created in another department. So he's basically like suing himself to get paid by himself. And he's just it's so obviously corrupt. It's so obviously corrupt. Freestyle Skate says, I see Trump dying before serious impeachment. Yeah. But, like, I think if the Democrats take power and they don't actually do something serious, then it's an indictment of the entire system. Like, they have to do something. It's even if, like, as I suspect, the entire thing is just a performance that these people are putting on. Like, they have to understand where the populace is standing on a lot of this stuff. And people are expecting a certain degree of justice to occur. Like, if it's not Donald Trump being impeached, then, like, Pete Hegseth should go to jail. Like, people should go to jail over what has happened during the Trump administration. But we've seen this song and dance before. Like, people should have gone to jail during the Bush administration, right? And that didn't happen because the Democrats and the Republicans are allies and they work together. But now we're just so outside of anything that could be considered political norms that if the Democrats take power and nothing happens, we know exactly what's going on. And honestly, I suspect that's what we'll see. I suspect we'll see like an Obama-esque kind of figure take power and say something about how, like, we need to unite the union, and so we're gonna pardon, like, just how, like, Carter pardoned Nixon, right? That'll be the same kind of thing. I think the difference here is that there's just no argument left, right? There's just no argument left to be like this isn't wiretapping. Really think about that. This is why I say, like, Donald Trump couldn't have gotten away with any of this stuff in the 60s, like, or the 70s for that matter. Because, like, Nixon resigned over a wiretapping scandal, right? That the Republicans wiretapped a Democratic office and a reporter found out about it and reported it, and this leads to Nixon resigning. Like, can you imagine? Like, if a reporter came out and reported on the Republicans wiretapping a Democratic office, the Republicans would be like, yeah. Next question. And that's exactly what would happen. And they'd be like, don't you think that that's bad? And don't you think, yeah, it's politics, baby, whatever. What are you talking about? Next question. That's exactly what would happen. Like, these people do not give a fuck. And they don't give a fuck because they don't have to. Because the populace is so gullible and stupefied that they know they're not going to face serious consequences for any of this stuff. And the populace is getting to a point now where these people should face serious consequences. Like, our political system should respond. And then you look over at China, and China is literally like, oh, these pedophilic child molesters, yeah, we executed them. Oh, we found a banker guilty of corruption, we executed him. And people are, like, looking at this and seeing, like, there's a disparity here. Like, there's something. Like, you can have a conversation about the state executing people, but at least there's the concept of justice. At least there's a concept of, like, oh, someone did something wrong and was found guilty of a crime and had to pay a consequence for it. Huh. How novel. Yeah, Freestyle Skate, the court case with Pam Bondi and the Epstein victims behind her. If it was the 60s, that courthouse would have been set on fire. Yeah. But I think that, like, the CIA and the FBI have been relatively successful in bamboozling and quelling the populace and creating an environment that is safe for oligarchic capital. Like, if you're working at the CIA or the FBI right now, like, you're a clown. You're a clown for capital. And you operate on behest of pedophiles and rapists. And that's your job. Like, that's your job. Your job is to protect these people. It's not to protect the national interests of America. Like, nothing that's happening in America is for its national interest. There's no national interest happening in America anymore. Everything that's happening exists so that a small handful of narcissistic, pedophilic, psychopathic rapists can continue raping children. Like, that's what it's all about. They want to have their, like, weird little orgy parties and do, like, their weird Diddy shit. And, that's what it's all about. And so if you're working for these international or these national organizations, like the FBI or the CIA, like, these are the people you're working for. And this is what the system is producing. And these are the outcomes that you're seeing. And they're being successful at it. Like, that's the big part. I think that's the takeaway. It's very much how, like I say, like, when the CIA first began doing what it was doing, I think that they were successful at overthrowing countries because people didn't think that they could or that they would actually spend the resources. So there was this lack of imagination amongst the victims, right? They didn't think that the United States would actually be so depraved or so nefarious or so sinister. But now they do. Now people are like, if you're not actually thinking about what the CIA is up to, then you're not serious about being a governor of your country. And that's led to the CIA being less effective, right? Because people's defenses are up and people are more aware that the CIA exists and there is such a thing as a CIA coup. Like, when we talk about the Alberta separatist movement that's happening, like, if you think the CIA is not involved in this in this separatist movement that's existing in Alberta, you're a clown. Like, you're just, if you stand up and say, I don't think the CIA, I just turn you off. I just don't think that you're a serious person capable of rational thought. You're just like a baby, basically being like, the CIA wouldn't do it. Yeah, they would. Obviously they would. They don't give a fuck. Like, what, you think the President of the United States standing up and being like, Canada should be the 51st state and, like, kicking up all this hive's nest, what, you think they're doing nothing? And then all of the sudden, out of nowhere, there's an Alberta separatist movement that's being taken very seriously? What, you think... So what, the CIA can do exactly this thing where they back a candidate in order to foment dissent within a government to get their own policies pushed forward, and they can do that all across the globe hundreds of times, but what, they're not doing it to you? Okay. Like, we just live in this baby brain world where there's people who are like, they wouldn't do the thing that they do to everybody else to us. Freestyle Skate writes, Americans are so wrapped up in consumerism despite a clear discipline in consumer buying power for the last few decades. And it wasn't as severe until 2008. From then, it's just been a steep decline. Like, we have been stupefied. To me, that's like the core of it, right? And I'm not free from it, right? Humans can be stupefied, and we get stupefied. We kind of like being stupefied. Like, alcohol is a really great example of humans essentially engaging in self-stupefaction. We like to be stupefied. It's difficult to not be stupid. Like, to actually have, like, not just the burden of the awareness of what's happening in your reality, but the burden of your own existence, the awareness of your own decline and your own death, like the awareness of your existence, is a heavy burden. The most difficult thing for a person to do is to deal with themselves, and that becomes extra difficult as you experience the decline. And even if your decline is a relatively clean and normal one, you still age out and die, right? And for many people, it isn't a clean and normal decline, right? It's full of dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It's full of diseases and difficulties, pain. Like, there's all kinds of things that are thrown up in front of you, and the world is just like, well, you better deal with that, and you have to. And our reality is like, yeah, you've got to deal with that. And our ruling class is basically like, here's made. You can just made out of this. And so, of course we want to be stupefied. Of course we engage in like this form of self-stupefaction. And alcohol is the big one, right? Because it's the one that's been around the longest. Like, as far back as you want to go, humans were like, yes, please, let's shut this thing off. Absolutely, I just want to be like, absolutely. And it's like, it's tough to judge. It's tough to be like, and we shouldn't. Like, yeah, no. Yeah, we're going to do that. I do that. Right? I just yesterday, I actually patted myself on the back because I was like, I didn't buy any alcohol. I was like, maybe I'll go get a bottle of rum and have some rum in my coffee. And I didn't. And I was like, good for me. Well done. But I still fire up like video games and shit. What, you think that isn't a form of stupefaction? You think that when you're playing Call of Duty or League of Legends or Stardew Valley or any of these kinds of games that's not a form of self-stupefaction? Of course it is. You think when you read your trashy Twilight novels or like watch your shitty Netflix bullshit that is literally about nothing, or your crappy reality TV, this isn't a form of self-stupefaction? Of course it is. Like, we want to be stupefied, but now the stupefaction is so it's so vast. There's so much. Like, and there's so many different types of stupefaction now. There's so many ways to stupefy yourself. That you can spend your whole life in this state of stupefaction. You can spend and people do. People do spend their whole lives in this state of total stupefaction. And the concept that art is used for self-growth, or that there's a reflective nature to art, that you hold art up as a mirror to kind of get a better sense of yourself, to learn something about yourself. Like, that whole thing can just be distilled out. You can spend your whole life watching like My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic if you want, right? And people do. Like, you see it with the Marvel shit. Like, the Marvel guys or the Star Wars guys, right? They're just, like, they've completely stupefied themselves. They're living in a literal fantasy world, having serious debates about the nature of the Force or whatever, and it's just meaningless. It's just about nothing. That it's easier for them to lay down the burdens of their own existence and the knowledge of their own reality, and to engage in this fantasy world of no consequence to anyone. And the extent to which they do it really shows that the burden of existence and the burden of their own society has gotten pretty heavy, right? Pretty heavy. Sport fandoms is a great example, right? And sport fandoms is a good one because that's one that's existed for a long time, right? From the very beginning, you can see sport fandoms. Yeah, XD, I knew people who have the potential to do so much more, but choose to stupefy themselves with, like, fucking Fortnite. Yeah. And, again, I find it difficult to judge. I'm as guilty as anybody else. Like, here, my big guilt recently has been League of Legends. I have been spending so much time playing League of Legends, guys. Like, for real. It's a real thing. And the character that I have chosen, his name is Mundo. Dr. Mundo. His whole shtick is that he is a moron. He is a stupid idiot who believes he is a doctor, even though he is not. He says stupid things, he does stupid things, and the gameplay that he engages in is pretty stupid. He's a stupid guy. And I love him. I love playing as this guy and being like a stupid idiot. So what am I doing to myself except engaging in my own stupefaction? And everybody is doing this, and it's just gotten so prevalent and so extreme. And I think the big turn is, it used to be the case that there was a little bit of shame attached to it. There was a little bit of the idea that, like, yes, we're stupefying ourselves. Yeah, we know we shouldn't. Like, we know we shouldn't. Like, we know that it's better in the long term for us all to face ourselves and to face reality and to face the nature of creation and to face these things. We know, we're aware, but it's hard. It's the hardest thing we're supposed to do. And so we just want to be a little stupid for a minute. And can't you give us a break on that? Like, give me a break, man. Like, I work hard. Like, the society asks a lot of me in the first place, and then I also have to do this other thing where I have to deal with my own decline and deal with myself. So yeah, I'm gonna spend my Fridays or my Saturdays in this kind of state of stupefaction, and I know I shouldn't. Blah blah blah. Yeah. But now there's this like celebration of it. Now it's like your whole life is this stupefaction, and there's like the internet allows you to find a community of people who are engaged in it, and you're connected into the idea that stupefaction is good, and that if somebody criticizes escapism or criticizes stupefaction, they're the bad guy. Just let people enjoy things. That's one that I hear. Just let people enjoy things. Okay. So we're essentially all together laughing ourselves to the grave. Right? Like the rise of stand-up comedy as a political force, I think, is kind of indicative of this. That stand-up comedy used to be like a fringe thing that was on the side. You'd see like Don Rickles was never like a serious. If Don Rickles was like, I really like this Ronald Reagan, you should vote for him, like that wouldn't sway anybody's opinion. Nobody would be like, oh, Don Rickles really wants the president to be Ronald Reagan, let's go. Like, but now it's, if somebody like Joe Rogan endorses Donald Trump, that actually gives him a bump, and you have like comedians actually taking credit for Donald Trump's election and saying like, yeah, we're the guys that gave him the bump he needed in the polls. Like, that's stupid. That's a stupefaction. That's a stupid culture. That's a stupid society that has truly engaged itself in its own stupefaction. And on one hand, it's easy to be judgmental about it and to condemn such a society, which, I mean, I kind of feel like we should have a bit of that. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, things have gotten so goddamn ridiculous, it's hard to judge people for doing it. Like, the suicide rate is soaring, right? More and more people are committing suicide. And it's like, yeah, it's tough to be like, yeah, and they shouldn't. Like, yeah, I don't know, bro. Like, things are bleak. Things are dire. And so how do I begrudge people who are like, yeah, I'm just going to spend the time that I have here enjoying myself to the degree that I'm capable of, right? Yeah, if that means I'm going to jam stupid shit in my face all the time, I'm going to. And it gets difficult because, like, you spend your time trying to find like the art or the culture or the things that humanity is producing that elevates the discourse. And it seems to be alienating. Like, I feel alienated as a person who's like, yeah, like Marvel shit and Star Wars shit and all this kind of stuff is garbage. Like, it's stupid little kid shit. and instead trying to find stuff that's like worth pursuing, to find something that actually has a commentary on the human condition, and something that you can watch and be like, and feel like you walked away from it a better person than when you started, you know? Something that increases your humanity, something that makes you, that makes the journey of your, that makes the job of dealing with yourself easier, right? To me, like, art and artists, that's really what it's all about, is that you're there to make the job of dealing with yourself easier. That, hey, I found something that made dealing with my own existence easier, and I'd like to show it to you. Like, for example, there's a great Mark Twain quote that I find myself using all the time, which is, I didn't much mind when I wasn't here. I don't think I'll mind much when I'm gone. And I find that makes things easier. And that's a real succinct, clear statement. If that's the only thing I ever saw Mark Twain say, and that was the like apex of his life, I would say, okay, that was a life well lived by Mark Twain. And that's a mark of true artistry, being able to succinctly articulate something that makes the job of dealing with oneself easier. But that's not what we're doing. And I suppose the stupefaction is about making it easier, but it's by making it easier by forgetting, by ignoring, by dismissing, or by pretending like it's not happening. It's just a way to kill time, really. And because we're not seriously engaging in more serious discourse, really stupid people get taken more seriously than they should. Like, the fact that Joe Rogan is a public figure at all is just like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? What kind of society do you have when Joe Rogan is a political figure that we actually have to discuss and talk about? Like, when Joe Rogan started, I listened, because he was having interesting guests on and like saying interesting stuff. I never once thought that this guy was going to take like a hard right turn and suddenly become like a political figure of any note or merit whatsoever. And now here we are. And the stand-up comedian has replaced the priest. The stand-up comedian, to me, it's a real sign of the decline of institutional trust and a decline in traditional outlets. Like, we don't trust the news. We don't trust the churches. We don't trust, like who do we trust? And it turns out that when you have that kind of vacuum of trust, people are willing to turn to just like clowns. Literally just like guys whose job it is to be like, and then I pulled my dick out. Ha 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 ha. That's it. Like, imagine like if you got all of your political information from Norm Macdonald, you know? Like, can you imagine if the apex of political discourse is a guy like David Spade? Like, what are we doing here? But that's what's happened. And it's happened because we've created this massive vacuum where guys like Jon Stewart seem to are taken more seriously than like news people and news anchors and journalists. And Jon Stewart actually said it, because somebody pointed this out to him. He said, like, no, I think that you guys, in reference to the news media, have just become closer to me. That Jon Stewart never changed. He was always in the position he was in, which is as, like, kind of a clown. And you can criticize Jon Stewart, and I do, but he's a liberal. But I think that that's true. That he's basically just a stand-up guy doing a stand-up routine, but that things have degraded so badly that he seems more important or more wise than he actually is. And because there's no wisdom, because we're in this kind of state of stupefaction where we're just so goddamn stupid all the time, and that's become normal. That's become the normalization. We've normalized our stupidity. And if somebody stands up and says, hey, can we maybe have a moment where we're not so goddamn stupid? Can we have a moment where we're like actually talking about more things? People are repelled by that because that's difficult to do. It's emotionally hard to do. You take emotional psychic damage doing it. And so people don't want to. I mean, fair enough. I mean, you'll have to eventually, right? You will decline. You will die. You will watch your family die. You will watch people around you die. That's part of the built-in structure, and you can't stupefy your way out of it. Like, that's the deal. And so my feeling has been, do the hard work when you have the energy to do the hard work. And then when you go through it, it means that you can experience it just as a ride. That I'm watching people go through it right now. And it's pretty clear that they never did the prep work. They didn't do the beforehand work, that they're doing the work now. And boy, does that look hard. Boy, does that look difficult. That looks way more difficult. So, JT, if you gaze into the stupefaction also gazes into you. For some reason, Nietzsche has become important again, and so I've got to read Nietzsche again. I didn't really read Nietzsche in university. I sort of faked it. So I have I have a kind of a dim view of Nietzscheism and of Nietzsche. I think that Nietzsche was an interesting guy because he did acknowledge that Christianity was in the decline. Like, the statement "God is dead" is an interesting statement, and I think I understand where he's coming from, right? Like, he's not saying that our perception of God is dead. Like, we no longer believe in God, really. We have these sort of like fake false idols that we focus on. And he's talking about, like, how do we stay away from nihilism, and how do we stay away from despair, and what kind of life do we live? But he really sets the philosophical foundation for the religion of capital, right? The worship of the self, the worship of money, right? The worship of a free market system. I don't think he does so intentionally. I don't think that was his intent, but I do think that he sort of sets, like, the whole concept of the Übermensch, right? Like, kind of sets that stage for the worship of the self. And I think that that's a reflection of the failure of Christianity and Christian institutions to maintain a proper argument of God, right? That God is an argument that we need to continuously uphold because it runs completely counter to the religion of capital. The religion of capital is all about the self, whereas the concept of God is about a collective understanding of our existence. Anyway, so I need to redress Nietzsche and brush that up a little bit, because he seems to be coming into the discourse again in a more serious way. Yeah, families literally break up over teams. It's embarrassing. Yeah. JT writes, stand-up comedy replaced serious philosophy. Even Bill Hicks and Carlin, to me, are too loose with their rhetoric for me to want to praise them. Yeah, I think that's right. Like, and Bill Hicks and Carlin are probably right at the top. If you want to talk about comedians as philosophers, right? That I do think that Bill Hicks and Carlin are probably right at the top of the discourse. And I got to continue my Mark Twain reading. I started reading Christian Science and should finish it. Yeah. Yeah. Early Joe Rogan was a dope. And that's what we loved about him, though. Like, we loved that about him. We loved that he was, like, just a dude who was like, hey, let's have this guy on and let's talk to him. And what Joe Rogan did, and what that is, that he really revealed that there was this hunger in the populace for long form dialogue, that the media had become really like small bite focused. Like everything was just like, today the Pope says blah 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 blah, and then this happened blah 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 blah, and then everything is just like the entire media landscape became like pre-TikTok basically. It's just that you didn't control the swipe, they controlled the swipe. So it was like this curated TikTok feed where it was just like information, and then this, and then this, and then this. Now a commercial break. Blah 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 blah. And then this, and then this, and then this. And Joe Rogan shows up and is like, "What if I just sit down with one person for 2 to 3 hours and just talk to them about whatever it is their expertise is? And what if I just talk to like a professor from Princeton about history?" And that's really what he was doing initially. And I was like, that's really, really interesting. And then over time, it just became like, the real problem is that he became infected by wealth. That was the real problem. That the true pivot point for Joe Rogan was when he signed that Spotify deal. $100 million Spotify deal. It's like, that's the true pivot. Because now he's no longer a boob just having conversations with whatever and whoever. Now he's no longer an everyman. That was sort of his big draw, is that he was just this everyman. Just a curious dude being like, what's up? And like, you knew he had a certain degree of wealth. Like he was on Fear Factor. Like he's doing okay. But he wasn't in this echelon. But after the Spotify deal, he is. He moves out to Austin, literally lives in like a gated palace, essentially. Opens up a comedy club there, is essentially like a minor lord of comedy. And like that's the shift, right? Now he has a position, and it's not the position of the everyman. Now he's like on the side of the capitalist class, and he starts interviewing Elon Musk, and he starts interviewing Peter Thiel, and he starts having these guys in, and not to actually challenge their positions, but to actually humanize them, and to give them the ear of an audience who's going to be like, oh, Daddy Elon said. When like these, and I mean, we should be thankful to Joe Rogan for doing that. Because while Joe Rogan was presenting these guys, it's like, yeah, let's humanize these guys and everyman them and like all this kind of stuff, and ask, and to be there to be like, whoa, I can't, right? But what he really did is showed how stupid these guys were, right? Go watch any interview between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, or any interview with him and like Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, any of these guys, and if you don't walk away being like, these guys should not have power, then I don't know where you're at. Like, these guys are idiots. And Rogan does everything he can to like give them a favorable platform, and they walk away looking super stupid to an individual. And like, I think the thing that makes them look the stupidest is that they're like cosplaying intelligent people, right? They know that they should be projecting an image of intelligence, and so they do try to do that, but they're acting, right? It's like going on to a television show or going into an interview and putting on a fake accent. Like, if you're not an idiot, you can see through it. And you can see through it with Elon Musk is the big one. Like, you can see through it like right away with Elon Musk. You're like, oh yeah, you're just a fucking dumbass. You're just a daddy's boy who's never been told no. And my favorite with Elon Musk is sometimes he has gone onto shows and people will just like people with knowledge of the systems that Elon Musk talks about will ask him specific questions about it and just like completely blow his game up, because Elon doesn't know anything. He's not intelligent. He just cosplays it. And he gets away with it because people like Joe Rogan just let him. Right? Like if I go onto a show pretending to be Dr. Phil, like there's a comedian out there who pretends to be Dr. Phil. That's his whole shtick, right? He does an impression of Dr. Phil. And it only works because everybody lets him. Because everybody's in on the joke. Right? But if you stand back and like actually like don't let him get away with it, then the whole thing would fall apart. But you would be a spoiled sport for doing so because it's just like comedy what he's doing. But with Elon Musk, it's the same thing. Right? He only gets away with cosplaying this intelligent person because we all let him get away with it. We're all in on the joke. We all want there to be a real-life Tony Stark because we're all stupefied by Marvel movies and shit. And so we want to live in this fantasy world where a guy like Tony Stark actually exists. When that's not a thing. That's never been a thing. There's just no such thing as a real-life Tony Stark. JT writes, comedians are individualist, armchair, and to me overlap with the literally me idea of projection we see from people loving Taxi Driver or Scarface. You are right about comedians being individualist. Like, comedians do believe in the concept of meritocracy. They believe that, like, the cream rises to the top. It's just they fail to kind of recognize the esoteric nature of what it is they're doing. Like, I'm at the top because I'm the best, is what they'll say. But, like, define what is best. Like, it's such humanity. The zeitgeist of humanity is indecipherable and inscrutable. So, somebody who would be considered the apex of comedy 5 years ago would be completely ignored today. Like, there's a really good example of this in, what's his name, Richard Dice Clay. When that guy was young, in the 80s, doing the shtick that he was doing, he was extremely popular. And people really liked him. And now you see his comedy today, and you're like, this was funny? Like, it's not even offensive. It's not even that kind of thing where it's like, ooh, he said that, and ooh, that wouldn't fly today. Ooh, it wouldn't. It's not that. It's just literally not funny. He like says a thing, and you're like, where's the punchline? I don't get it. And it's just a different time. Yeah, Andrew Dice Clay, a caricature of a caricature. A caricature of a caricature. Yeah, and like, I remember I watched an interview of Dice Clay on Joe Rogan, and Dice Clay was trying to do a shtick, and Joe Rogan was just like he wasn't being rude. He wasn't like trying to shut Clay down, but you could tell Rogan was just like, am I supposed to be laughing at this? Like, is this a funny thing? Am I supposed to be going along with this? I don't get it. And, but like, that's comedy, right? That as comedy evolves and as one of the big things that I think comedians say to themselves is that they'll say comedy reveals truth, and that's kind of a self-ingratiating thing for them to say, so that they can say like these horrible things or say or risque things, and then be like, you laughed though, so that says that there's something true about it, and so that gives it credibility. But they're imprecise with their understanding of what's going on, because it's not revealing the truth, it's just revealing something true in the person doing the laughing. Right? You're not hitting a universal truth. You're not achieving something that is true universally. You're just revealing something true in the person doing the laughing. And so that's why the whole thing is as kind of esoteric and odd as it gets, and why some comedy works for certain audiences and not others. Because some audiences are simply not going to find your subject matter very funny, and others, like I think about what's his name, Anthony Jeselnik. Anthony Jeselnik is like, I think he's actually a brilliant comedian, but his brilliance comes from the understanding he has that his comedy is not for everyone, that he exists within a very niche sort of place. And he understands that, like, yeah, I'm not going to go to, like, your daughter's 14th birthday party and tell these jokes. Like, that's not how this is going to go. He understands that he's not within the mainstream, and I think that that's what makes him brilliant, because he knows who he is and what he is and what his comedy is for. Whereas a lot of these comedians are like, if you're not laughing at what I'm doing, there's something wrong with you, you know? And I'm like, nah, bro, that's not how this works. Like, that's just not how this works at all, right? If I'm not laughing at what you're laying down, we're just not connecting. Like, I just don't think you're funny. And even better, there's like comedians that maybe you did think were funny. Then you kind of grow up a little bit and their act kind of stays the same. And you're like, oh, yeah. Like, who's a comedian that I used to think was funny fairly recently was... Oh, I'm blanking on his name, and that's so annoying. Oh, that's so annoying that I'm blanking on this guy's name. He was in that kind of Rogan sphere, but he's not one of the more outspoken ones. He's a short white dude. Hey, do this kind of thing. Where you're like, hey, you know, well, and that was kind of his shtick. He was like this. Oh, that annoys me so much that I'm blanking on this guy's name. But when he first showed up and he was doing his thing, I was like, oh, this guy's funny. I like this guy. He's got kind of a thing going on. And then, 5 years go on and I listen to his stuff and I'm like, oh, this isn't funny. This is just like low-level wordplay, mainly. Okay. But so this like kind of self-ingratiating thing that the Rogan sphere has done and comedians do, where they like try to elevate themselves by saying, I'm here because I'm the best. It's like, nah, man, you're just like, you're just in the right spot. You're just in the pocket. You're just in the pocket. And you should be more grateful, because that's a very fragile place to be. And you can get spit out of that pocket. Like, can you imagine Adam Sandler showing up on Saturday Night Live today and being like, Shadooby-Doo, even like Jim Carrey, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and all that. I just don't think anybody would grab onto it. I think everybody would just be like, what? It's just the stupidest shit I've ever seen in my life. But during the 90s, at that time, it made kind of sense. You were like, yeah, like, this is hilarious. I love this. And so there's a fragility to it all, and there's a fragility to comedy that I wish comedians were more aware of. It seems like they're not. It seems like because the most popular religious ideology is capitalism, and one of the central pillars of it is this worship of the self and the self-ingratiation, it seems like they need to justify what they're doing through that lens, through the lens of self-aggrandizement. And I just kind of wish they wouldn't, because comedy of all forms is, you have the least amount of control. Like, you can say one thing to one group and have it be the funniest thing in the world, and say the exact same thing to another group, and it's just dead. So it's as esoteric and as strange and as peculiar as it gets. And every comedian will say it over and over again. Yeah, you just don't know until you get it up, and you got to be in front of an audience. It's like, okay, man, like there's this obvious relationship connection that's happening where you kind of have to just grind into it. And some people will grind into it and end up going nowhere. And it doesn't matter what they say, it doesn't matter what they do, they just don't have it. Right? They just don't have it. And then some people will go up and the first thing they ever say will just be absolutely connect, and they just have it. And you think that comes from like an innate, like, you think that's your fault? Interesting. Freestyle Skate writes, I remember how traumatic it was coming to the realization that the communists were indeed right, yeah, that everything I was brought up on was a lie. It was gut-wrenching. I was bedridden for a year. Oof. Yeah. I can respect that. That has a real, let me see if I'm getting this story correct. There's a story that exists within Buddhism where a prince who has only lived his life inside of the palace walls leaves his palace for the first time as a young man and sees an old person for the first time. And so he asks, what is this? What am I looking at? And he's told what he's looking at, and he's told about it, and it takes him, and so he retreats back to his palace, and it takes him 6 months to recover. And then he leaves his palace again, and he sees somebody who is disease-ridden. And he says, who is this? What is this? What's going on? And so they tell him about disease and what it is. And so he retreats back to his palace, and he has to recover again. And there's this sense, like when you're living in a manufactured bubble, when you're living in a false reality, and you exit that reality, or something confronts that reality so sharply that it can no longer be maintained, you take an enormous amount of psychic damage. You take an enormous amount of psychological damage. And it takes a long time for a person to come back around. And perhaps I should be more forgiving of the society that I live in and more forgiving of the people living in it, because we are in this age of maybe awakening is the wrong word. I feel like awakening is a very floofy word, you know. It's the Great Awakening. It has that kind of feeling. But like, things have gotten so obvious that the myths that we are told have been rendered so childish. Like, a person walking in here and spouting this capitalist propaganda looks like a lunatic. Right? Like, if I met somebody out on the street and they were actually talking the way that the capitalists want us to talk, I'd be like, you're a fucking loon. Like, you get out of here, flat earther nonsense person. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, holy cow. I have more respect for the person on the street trying to sell me a Bible than I do, or the Quran or something, than I do for something telling me about the glory of capitalism. It's so obviously fraudulent. It's so obviously fake. It's so obviously ridiculous. And it's the obviousness of its ridiculousness that has made it, and because it's become so obvious, I think everybody's taken a lot of psychic damage over it. I think that, and we're not really, like, one of the things that I feel like I'm trying to do with this podcast, with this thing that I'm doing here, is deal with my own psychic damage, but hopefully help other people deal with theirs. Because, like, the Trump administration especially has just been very traumatic. Very traumatic. And there's this disillusionment that's going to come. And if you think that the disillusionment that came after the Obama years was bad, like, you wait for this. The blowback from this is going to be just sparkling. It's going to be absolutely insane. It's going to be on a new level. And it might be, and this might be interesting. This might be very surprising for people, right? It might contain a good amount of humility. Like, you think about people who were like really MAGA and really like going for it, and now they see that they've been betrayed. And they see that the voices that were within that movement have now repudiated it, and the whole thing is falling apart. And to know that you've been duped, that this was all a lie, there are people within the MAGA movement whose hearts are in the right place. That they genuinely were standing there saying, no more wars. Like, anti-war. Donald Trump has been saying nothing but terrible things about the Iraq war, and I don't want any more wars. Why are we funneling all our money into war, and why are we doing this? And yeah, go in there and drain that swamp, man. Like, clearly there's something going wrong, and clearly something's bad, and we need to do that. And those people exist within the MAGA movement 100%. And a lot of them are just like good old boys. They don't have a political perspective. They don't have a political backing. They're just becoming politically active right now. And now they see they've been betrayed. And it's just obvious. Like, it's just obvious. To cling on to the idea that Donald Trump is still trying to help you at this point, you're gone. You're too far gone. I don't think you can be negotiated with anymore. Like, it's like, okay, like, the earth is, as far as you're concerned, the earth is flat. When you die, you're going to go see Jesus Christ in heaven. Okay. Great. I don't think you negotiate with those people anymore. That they're living in a non-rational space. But there are people who are going to come out of that with a sense of righteous anger and a sense of righteous fury. And they're not going to let up. Like, they're not going to let up. And so the blowback that comes from the Trump administration is going to be very interesting. And to me, it's very dangerous for the oligarchy. I think the oligarchy doesn't quite understand exactly how bad the blowback from that is going to be for them. And you can sort of see they're kind of doing damage control. Like, why else would Jeff Bezos be like, hey, you can tax me all you want. It's not going to help a nurse in New York, right? Why else would he be saying that kind of stuff if he didn't feel threatened? And I just think that, like, you're going to see people rise up in the Republican Party and likely in the Democratic Party as well, who are going to be a reflection of the blowback from this moment. The sadness of all of that, the kind of tragedy of the moment in American politics, is that most people still believe the electoral system will somehow respond. That's the true sadness. That most people are of the opinion that somehow we can resolve this electorally. That is not what's going to happen. This will not be resolved electorally. And that's the next that's the crossing of the next Rubicon. That's the next level. That you're going to see, like, the return of the Black Panthers, which means you're going to see the return of the Ku Klux Klan. You're going to see large militia groups appear because more and more people are steadily going to recognize that there is not an electoral solution to this, because there isn't. The electoral system no longer functions on behalf of anybody except a small cabal of oligarchs. And yeah, no voting your way out. And I don't know when there'll be a breaking point. I think that instinctually people in the West already know. That's why less and less people go and vote. Right? Voting has been in the toilet for decades now. The lowest level voter turnout ever. Right? And I think it's because people intrinsically understand that their vote doesn't matter what they do. And if the opposition to all of this was actually serious, like, people would be jailed. Like, there would be people going to jail. But we all know that's not going to happen. We all know that people are not going to be punished for this. That there are entire institutions whose job it is to prevent that very thing. And we all know it's become completely corrupted. And yet, the majority of people, I believe, hang on to the hope that it will be resolved electorally. And that's why I think we're in this sort of stasis of action. We won't see people actually take matters into their own hands because they still think that we'll vote our way out. I think about what's happening here in Ontario. The leader of the opposition of the NDP outright said that she would put Doug Ford in jail over the corruption that he's doing here. And so I'll vote for her just on that. Because Doug Ford should go to jail, for sure, 100%. And so I'll vote for her. Do I believe she will do that? No. Because the structure of capitalist power, that's not how it works, right? That you operate on behalf of the capitalists, and they're not going to punish you if you do their bidding, even if it's corrupt. But I'd like to see. I'd like to be able to sit here and be like, yeah, hey, the NDP came into power here in Ontario. Did they put Doug Ford in jail? No. So they're allies. They work together, just like I've been saying the whole time. I'd like to have more evidence of my claim, right? Because my claim is that the political parties work together, that they are not separate bodies with separate interests. And a clear piece of evidence that you could use to show that to be the case would be an opposition party coming in after threatening to jail the leader of the ruling class, and then nothing happens. Like, when Carter takes power and pardons Lincoln, you're just like, oh, yeah, they're allies. They work together. And I do think eventually there's a breaking point. Like right now, the millennials are turning 40. I always considered myself a millennial, but as things seem to be settling down, it looks like I'm actually a cusp. I am essentially directly between Gen X and the millennials. I would be an elder millennial or the last of Gen X. And so that seems to be a theme of my life. I've never been in the middle of... I've always been on the outskirts, which is normal. Like, I mean, I'm a rural Manitoba boy, so I've always been on the outskirts. The millennials are turning 40. And they're beginning to get... The decline is beginning. From the millennials. The decline is going to begin. And the most difficult part of the journey is going to begin. Because the decline into death is the most difficult part. I don't think you can debate it. And it's going to begin. And they're going to begin reflecting on the life that they lived. And they're going to begin reflecting on the growth period. And they're going to begin seeing the society that they're living in. 20 years from now, the millennials will be turning 60. And if things continue this way, if the trend continues the way that we're seeing, arm up. Like, you think that these people are going to go quietly? Like, you think that people go quietly into that good night? Like, you think that death... Like, you think that the majority of people, when being betrayed and abandoned utterly and entirely, the way that our society is abandoning us, you think that they're going to go peacefully? Okay. If you say so, champ. I don't think so. Like, I really don't think so. And, like, when the boomers die, there's this intrinsic hope that I think people have that the boomers are sort of holding on to this old guard philosophy, and that when the boomers die, the dam will break and we'll be able to get things done electorally. There's sort of that hope. But what will happen is that the boomers die and all of their assets will be sucked up by the capitalist systems. And so you'll have like a small group of millennials who are inheritors, but for the most part, it'll all just get hoovered up by the hedge funds, basically. And the millennials will be left with nothing, and Gen Z will be left with less. And like the impoverishedness, like the impoverishment is going to be entrenched and systemic. It's already entrenched. It's already systemic. It'll just get worse. And it's going to get pretty difficult for me to understand a person who is just sort of bumping along. Joe writes, kind of shocked how many Gen Xers and millennials still make excuses for capitalism. I think that they're a small minority, right? Like Gen X is interesting because like Gen X basically is just like, put your head down, go to work, who cares? Like, I respect the position that Gen X found themselves in because they were outnumbered. They were completely outnumbered. Like, the boomers were going to do this, and that's what they were going to do, and Gen X is just sitting there being like, okay. That's why you get the alternative rock movement from the 90s, right? Despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. Like, that's why you get Black Hole Sun. That's why you get Nirvana. Like, that whole musical movement is a existential psychological rebellion from everything that preceded it. Because Gen X is fully aware and fully understands that it doesn't matter what I think. Like, it doesn't matter what I do. Like, you're talking about a group of people who literally watched their parents execute Martin Luther King. You're just like, oh, okay. Like, this is just what we're going to do. And, like, you talk about, like, we're not going to vote our way out of it. Yeah, Gen X has been aware of that. We're not going to vote our way out of it. We know. And so there's this just sense of acceptance that exists within Gen X. And it's sort of sad because when the boomers die, there will be a moment where something can change. But they'll be so entrenched in the acceptance that things will not change that they'll just go to their grave with that acceptance and just be like, that's how it is. Yeah, this is just how it is, and you can't do anything about it. And that's all. That's all there is to it. And, like, to me, the millennials who are making excuses for capitalism are the ones who are going to be the inheritors, right? That we are now returning, or we have returned. I shouldn't say we are returning. We have returned to essentially feudal systems, and intergenerational wealth will be the way things are. So, like, if your parents have $100 million, great. And the system that gave your parents $100 million, you'll absolutely defend that. Because you're going to inherit that wealth. And you're going to be an intergenerational wealth holder. And so nobody wants to actually decry what they're, what is benefiting them. Right? People will defend that. But I do think that there are going to be, like, it's really important to remember that the media outlets that exist are owned by capitalists, right? So they're the screaming news headlines and the media outlets and the institutional power that is just screaming at the top of their lungs about how great everything is. Yeah, they don't represent the majority of people. Like that's why there is this sort of sense of confusion even now about Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump was able to grab hold of popular forces. It's why people called him a populist. Because the popular sentiment is that things are fucked. And we want them to be less fucked. And it takes a grifter like Donald Trump to manipulate that idea and manipulate that force for his own benefit. Whereas the people who are within the institution, someone like Bernie Sanders, who have been within the institution for a long time are just silenced and shut out, which is exactly what we saw in the Democratic Party. Like, and if somebody like Bernie Sanders were to show up in the Republican Party, like, I'll say this, and it'll probably happen within my lifetime. Like, if a Bernie Sanders style person were to show up in the Republican Party and actually start gaining power, they would shoot him. And that's what they would do. They would just be like, oh, here's a guy who's actually going to, like, tax the oligarchs, actually try to build institutional power for the benefit of the populace. Pop. That's exactly what would happen. Because the Republican Party doesn't actually have systemic mechanisms to close people out of the process. That's one of the interesting things about the Republican Party. That, like, say what you will, Donald Trump won the election. Like, he's the guy that convinced people to vote for him. Whereas the Democratic Party doesn't have that same system. That they have a mechanism to close people out. And they did that to Bernie Sanders twice. So, 3 times, I think. And so the question, like, at this stage in the game, if I'm in the Democratic Party, I'm like, maybe we should let Sanders through. Like, this is getting bad. Like, maybe we should actually allow, because really, like, what I think most people want is just basic liberalism. I think that's what most people really want. Like, if a leader, like, you take a look at Zoran Mamdani. Here's a perfect example, right? Zoran Mamdani is doing, like, the piecemeal reform liberal shtick. It's like the smallest scale, little tiny kind of stuff. Oh, over on Twitch. Sorry, guys, I haven't looked at Twitch in a minute. Iron Moff, hello. What are you talking about? Communism? Life? If you have any questions, comments, concerns, query, anything you'd like me to talk about, you go ahead. If you're one of these people who's like, isn't communism the worst thing ever and it's going to lead to disaster, you go ahead with that. This is a channel that's about dealing with the reality of the decline of Western civilization and dealing with the reality of systemic abandonment within our culture. The psychological damage that brings. So that's what we're here to do. That's what a lot of us are here to do. It's like it's almost become like a weekly checkup, really. And I don't know, for me, it's, if I wanted to be really personal about it, it's just a way for me to get certain things off my chest. That I find that for myself, if I don't put this stuff here, I put it on people in the world, and it's very alienating, and I don't like it. So I'd prefer to do it this way. Yeah, Joe, yeah, if you inherited $100 million tomorrow, would you suddenly defend capitalism? Probably not, but when you're raised in it, it's hard to see beyond it. Yeah, that's it. You live within the palace walls, right? You live within the bubble. And if you're living within the bubble, like, it's tough to see anything else. It's that concept of privilege, right? Like, that word privilege, like, it's become mainstream fairly recently, but I think it's right that the people who are defending the system of capital do so because they're privileged and they have the ability, they lack the ability to see beyond it. And they're incentivized not to, right? That they want to believe, and in many ways it's like a very childish thing, right? They want to believe that dad is good. They want to believe that the systems that made them rich are good and that you are against them and so you are bad. And it's just a very Marvel movie, like good guy, bad guy kind of way of looking at the world. Bound writes, yeah, it's easy to bump along if you're making a decent wage and happy where you are. Yeah, like, and to me, again, this is one of the things that makes what's happening today so stupid and dumb and our leaders so pathetic, is that people really want so very little. Like, they really want the barest of minimums. Like, the demands that are coming out of the populace are not extreme, even a little. Even a little. Like, what are the demands of the populace? Like, most of the populace is like, yeah, I'm fine going to work for people I hate for a job that I know is pointless. I just want a living wage, right? They're not asking for deep structural change. They're not asking for revolution. They're not asking for these leaders to be overthrown. They're literally saying, hey, if I work a full-time job, I should be able to pay my rent. And it's like not happening for them. Like that's how you know things are getting stupid and that the leaders that we have are stupid. Because any leader with any sense in their head, like if our leaders were really like Machiavellian geniuses, were really like scheming, conniving people, like if they actually were intelligent, they would be like, yeah, obviously, if you're working a full-time job, that should pay your rent, and that should definitely happen. And if that's not happening, we should just be like, hey, man, like you don't need that extra $1 million. Come on. Like, that's what would be happening. But that's not happening. And it's not happening because the leadership that we have are, like, desperately bought in to a religious ideology that has made them stupid. And I think that's pretty much across the board. I don't think that there is any intelligent... I think the most intelligent person I've seen in any position of leadership today is Wab Kinew, who is the premier of Manitoba. I think he's literally the only guy. I think you could make an argument for someone like Tom Massey, but Tom Massey's gotten pushed out. That pretty much the system is designed to exclude intelligence and to elevate stupidity. And to make it so that the stupidest people in the room are the people who have power. Because at this point, you have to be stupid to maintain what's happening. Like, it's just so obvious that there needs to be even a basic reform. And instead of getting like a basic reform, instead of basic liberalism, we're electing arch conservatives who are essentially fascists, who basically will say to you, just work harder, shut up. And that's like the Liberal Party, that's the Conservative Party, that's the Democrats and the Republicans. There's just no sense that, like, hey, we should have, like, basic cultural norms. And, like, when I say basic cultural norms, I mean just, like, your systems should provide food, shelter, education, healthcare. If your system is not providing food, shelter, education, healthcare, then you are wildly outside of human norms, out of cultural norms. Like, feudal serf societies provided those things. Slave systems provided those things. Tribal societies provided those things. Like, the food, shelter, healthcare, education, these were provided in almost every single configuration of human civilization that has ever existed. It's capitalism that insists that food and shelter, healthcare and education are optional. It's capitalism that asserts that you should not have access to these things. Like, that's extremely strange, extremely unusual, wildly outside of human norms. And we shouldn't tolerate it, even a little bit, even a tiny little bit. And the idea that we're being told to tolerate it is itself despicable and disgraceful. Inhumane. Yeah, that's a great word. Just inhumane. And because it's every party, because it's all of them, we know that it's systemic. We know that we have a systemic problem and that we're dealing with something very, very serious. And I think most people are just kind of clinging on with a sense of hope. But the collapses are coming. And they're going to be very serious. And like our federated systems are not going to withstand them. Like the weak, pathetic, like liberal conservative alliance is just going to reveal itself to be completely incapable of responding. You take a look at what the perfect example is. Like, you had that flooding that happened in New Orleans, Remember back in the 90s under Bush? And it just like the federal government just did not respond. The EPA just did not respond. People were just abandoned. It'll just be like that. It'll just be full wholesale abandonment on the highest possible level. And the media system just simply won't report on it. They just won't talk about it. It'll be like that train wreck that happened in East Palestine, where they like blew up the chemicals. And like the media system just didn't report on it. The only reason anybody knows about it is because it was on TikTok. But now TikTok is owned by, Zionist psychopaths. So, they're not going to spread that around. And so it just leaves me with the same kind of place. Leaves me in the same place where I always find myself at the end of these conversations, right? It's about your neighbors. It's about getting to know people. It's about building a community. It's about the people who are directly beside you, physically beside you. It's not about trying to build an internationalist movement or some highfalutin kind of thing. It's literally who's your next door neighbor? What's their name? What's their needs? What's their life like? What do they need? Like, if you actually want to change what's going on, it's going to be in your apartment block, right? Because as the systems abandon you, as they are, those are the people that you're going to be relying on the most. There just will come a time. Like, I actually think that Mamdani, what he's doing with the grocery stores, is going to be very important for New York, because really what he's doing is he's building local distribution systems and local distribution networks that aren't tied to like this international corporate system and corporate structure, because those international corporate structures will close down and abandon you. They just will. Like, Walmarts will leave. Starbucks will shut down. Canadian Tire, Target, like these big gigantic like goods warehouse distribution chains will eventually hit a wall where they'll just say, oh yeah, like people can't afford the goods we're selling anymore. Close it up. It's over. And that's going to happen. It's already happening in many places across America. Like, that's why Mamdani has to open up grocery stores, because grocery chains won't open up places in these like food deserts that exist in America. And they won't do it because people can't afford the goods they want to sell at the price they want to sell it at, because the price they want to sell it at is inflated because there's this worthless capitalist at the top that does nothing, that wants $6 for an onion. And that's just what's going on. And so as we walk into the future, like, the institutions of the past will fade out. Like your Walmart's going to be the big one, right? Like Walmart will just, one day Walmart will just be like, yeah, we can't make a profit from people who don't have any money. So we're just going to close. And people will be like, well, how do I get goods? I don't care. Fuck off. And like Amazon will just not deliver to places because they're like, yeah, we can't really make a profit delivering goods to your neighborhood anymore. You don't really have any money, right? Your neighborhood is impoverished. And it's just going to expand until eventually, like, the only people will have access to goods will be the people who can afford to get them. And that's going to be, the 5,000 people who actually have wealth in the nation. like the entire system is becoming like 5,000 families with all the wealth, and then the people who service them. And that's essentially the society. And the hundreds of millions of people who are not able to do that, because you don't need that many service workers, and you don't need that many lawyers, and you don't need that many people doing these things for you. They'll just be told to go fuck themselves. And they'll have no access to resources whatsoever. Yeah, Joe, yeah, we're already halfway there with the rise of the dollar store chains. Yeah. Like, Walmart was supposed to be like a dollar store chain when it started, and then you have this like other iteration of the dollar store chains, and then eventually it'll just be nothing. Like, eventually it will be nothing, and that will just be empty. And it'll be empty because nobody around will have the money to buy the goods. Like, and it's going to happen within our lifetime. Like, for sure. I'm dead convinced of it. That inflation, what they call inflation, which is just corporations jacking up prices, will just get so bad. And the real nail in the coffin, like the real thing that'll get it done, is that like the people who own Walmart, they already have like hundreds of billions of dollars. They don't really care. Like, what's another $10 billion? Like, they don't really care. They're not really operating these places. It doesn't really matter to them anymore. They're just going to cut and run. Why shouldn't they? I think I'm going to end this one a little early today. 8:40. Get to know your neighbors. Say hello to them, right? Get to know their names. Know who they are. That's the future of all of this. Local, right? Who lives in your neighborhood? Do you have a local newspaper? Do you have a local Reddit group? Like, what activities are going on at your local library? Like, local. Commie economist. My comments haven't gone through. Capitalism shadow bans all its enemies. Yeah. There won't be a revolution organized on the internet. That's for sure the truth. No, always remember, everyone. You are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.